Coronavirus may be dominating the headlines, but for BHP spin-off South32, it was the US-China trade spat that smashed profits. Net profit after tax plunged 84% to $99 million. It's bad news for shareholders whose dividends have been cut to 1.1 cents per share, with the same again as a special dividend, down 78%. Now the new frontline, COVID-19, is threatening more volatility for commodity prices. But South32 CEO Graham Kerr says that's not all bad news. Graham Kerr, welcome to The Business.
Oh, thank you.
Graham, it's not often the world's commodity producers are brought to a screeching halt. How worried are you about the impact of coronavirus on commodity prices?
Well, it's been an interesting half-year result for us because obviously in the first half of the year we had a material impact in terms of commodity prices, which are predominantly driven by the trade war at that stage. And funny enough, for the last 2 months we've actually seen an uptick in prices for our key commodities. Obviously the uncertainty is around the coronavirus and what impact that will have. I think it's important to understand that we probably don't see that as consistent, if you like, across the whole commodity equation. For some of our commodities, obviously there's been a bit more of a negative impact. For some of our commodities, such as manganese, met coal, alumina, which has been imported into China, it's actually increasing some of the demand because of some of the restrictions that exist on their domestic facilities in terms of people coming back to work, some of the transportation requirements. So at this stage we continue to work through that process.
We've seen production lines stopped, workers sent home, and in some cases factories shut down. Do you think that could happen here?
I think you can look across all of Australia and say, look, there are strong business connections between Australia and China, and it's broader than China, it's the whole Asian complex. You know, they are part of our major trade routines and partners, if you like, now. So obviously as their consumption drops off, as some of the concerns around their businesses sort of come to fruition, it does mean there's going to be a challenge on many parts of Australia's economy because we're tied to the hip with them.
Not only are we in the grips of biological warfare with the coronavirus, but the trade war has impacted your first half earnings. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question because as a company that believes in global free trade for the commodities we produce, obviously we like a world where there is more cooperation between countries around economic development. Now, on the positive side, we only sell about 22% of our product, if you look at a revenue basis as a percentage for the first half of the calendar year into China. But the reality is if China feels that pain, they're such a large global contributor now from an economic sense, the whole world feels that pain.
A lot of people have talked up the recent trade war deal as a resolution, but it's really just a temporary truce, isn't it?
Look, we would have the view that we see it more as, it's a step in the process, and, the reality is China's rise as an economic power and a political power in the world, there's always going to be a little bit of friction.
You're on track to sell off your South African thermal coal business. Prices have been thumped because of, among other things, the shift to renewables. How do you see the future of metallurgical coal? Will it remain a key commodity for South32?
We've been very clear from day one that climate change is real and the world needs to react. We've also been very clear that we would not buy, build or actually develop a new energy coal basin because we do believe that there are actually substitutions for that are more green, more friendly. We also recognise, though, that places like South Africa, India, other developing worlds will have a different transition path perhaps than what Australia does and other developed countries. So in saying that, we're not a believer in energy coal, but we certainly are a believer that today, if you look at met coal, it's an important part of lifting people out of poverty in terms of that steel production. I think the key critical components of coking coal is a high quality to reduce the carbon footprint and get value in use as you have larger blast furnaces. And the other piece is what are you doing on the technology side to make that coal as clean as you can.
Graham Kerr, thanks for speaking to The Business.
Thank you.